Hey everybody, I'm excited to share a few thoughts with you today around how we can all show up as better leaders. And by that, I don't just mean those of us who are in a position of authority, because we all have influence. And so how do we show up in a way that we can just provide a more meaningful human experience for the people around us? So I'm 17 years old, walking through some slightly creepy back alley, downtown Salt Lake City, dodging puddles of dirty water to get to the employee entrance of the bagel shop where I work. I walk through the door, I wash my hands, I slip on my red apron, and I walk behind the counter. Behind me are about 16 baskets of freshly baked bagels, throwing out this sort of weird aroma of sweet and savory smells. And even though it's only 10:30 in the morning, I'm already dreading the lunch rush, which is going to hit at noon. The shop is right next to the Salt Lake Tribune building, back when newspapers were a thing. And at noon every single day, that building empties out, and it seems like every human being in that place forms a line from our counter out the door and up the sidewalk. And it's madness for like an hour. Super stressful. Not only that, the guy who runs the shop is super demanding. We have to wash our hands so often that my hands are literally red all the time. I never get an opportunity just to chill and talk to the people that I work with. If there's nobody at the counter, no customers at the counter, we are cleaning something, restocking something, organizing something. And this feels like a lot of stress and demand and stuff I don't need as 17-year-old me in a part-time, go-nowhere minimum wage job. In fact, this job had such an impact on me that I have compared every other thing I've ever done to that job, because it was the best job I've ever had. Yeah, some of the circumstances weren't ideal, but the reason that I loved it so much was because of Ben, the guy who ran the shop. He wasn't demanding, and he didn't, come down on us because of some need he had to check off, a list of things that he wanted us to do. It's because he genuinely believed that each one of us had greatness inside of us, and he felt like it was his job to pull it out. So he would push us, and he would hold us accountable, and he would not solve our problems, and he would make us come up with solutions. And I know that approach to leadership might sound really stupid for a silly part-time bagel shop job, but it's just who he was. As I look back at him and all of the other great leaders that I've had myself and that I've observed over and learned from over the last 13 years of doing the work that I do, I've come to notice that it's less about what a leader is doing and more about who they are being that makes the difference. What I mean by being is, how do we show up? What type of environment do we create? How do we occur to people? What is the experience that we provide when we're in the room? And so often leadership is so much more focused on what we're doing and how we, how we make decisions and how we hire people and how we develop talent and how we do our job description, that we don't put a lot of focus on who we're being, how we show up. So in the next video, I want you to do a little exercise with me to help you understand maybe how you've seen this idea of being play out in your own life. Okay, I want you to think of your favorite teacher. Isn't it incredible how for so many of us, a name and a face immediately pops into our head, or at least a name. Maybe we don't remember what they look like. But think about the reason that you remember that teacher. My guess is that it's not because of anything specific that they taught you. I mean, there are hundreds of other teachers that could have taught you how to speak French or dissect a frog or solve that math equation that you would literally never use again after the test. The reason we remember these teachers is because of these human things. It was who they were being, not necessarily what they were doing. So for example, maybe they saw something in us that we didn't see in ourselves. We could tell that they genuinely cared about us. They taught us in a way that we needed to learn. right? It was a very human experience. That's what we remember. That's what I mean by who we are being. So I want to share with you 3 traits that I have found in every great leader that I have ever had and that I have ever observed or learned from in the work that I've been doing. I'll share those 3 traits with you in the next video. Okay, the 3 traits that help us to practice the art of being and to become the kind of leaders that we remember so fondly are honesty, humility, and humanity. Now, I'll just give you a brief definition of each one and what it might look like. So when I talk about honesty, I'm going beyond the dictionary definition of telling the truth and following through on our commitments. As important as those things are, I want to take it one level deeper. To me, honesty in a leadership context means that the actions that we take are in alignment with the beliefs or the values that we hold. Importantly, a second piece of that definition is when, not if, but when we veer off course, because we're human and we're going to screw it up, we have the honesty to recognize that we have veered off course, and we will be willing to do the hard work to bring our actions back into alignment with what we profess to stand for. So that's honesty, is do our actions align with what we tell people we stand for? What that might look like, I'll tell you in just a second, but this particular one, in order to practice it, there's a prerequisite. In order to behave in alignment with what we stand for, we obviously have to know what we stand for. So the prerequisite is we have to do the hard work of understanding what are our values? What do we believe in? What do we care about enough that we would sacrifice for it? Once we have that, then we can start to practice it. So here's what it might look like. I'll tell you something that works for me. It might be different for you, but this is something that is really easy for me to implement because I'm doing it anyway, and I'm just adding this little element of honesty to it. So I have 4 core values that I work really hard to live by. And every week I choose one of them. And every time I walk through a doorway, wherever I am, I repeat in my head that value. And it's an action, it's a verb, it's something that I can actually do. So when I walk through the door to come in my office and have a Zoom call, I remind myself, this is the value that I want to live. This is how I want to show up. When I walk into the living room to play with my kids, I walk through that doorway and I remind myself, this is the value of this week. This is how I want to show up. This is who I am, right? So dozens or hundreds of times in a week, I'm reminding myself of what that value is and what it looks like. What's the action that I can practice? Then the next week, I switch to the next one. So thousands of times throughout the year, I'm constantly reminding myself what those actions are, or what those values are, and what they look like in action. So it absolutely makes a difference in how I show up wherever I am. Now, am I perfect at it? Nope. That's where that second part of the definition comes in. When I screw up, because I do frequently, I remind myself, this is what I value, this is what I believe in, and I try to bring my actions back into alignment with that as I move forward. Okay, second thing is humility. Humility, there's 2 pieces to it. One is admitting our weaknesses without getting defensive, which is really hard. The second part of humility, which is maybe a little less common and we don't talk about it enough, is acknowledging our strengths without letting ego get in the way. So what I mean by that is often humility is seen as weakness or inferiority or downplaying, the experience that we have or what we've done well, or, we kind of, no. Like, that's not humility. Humility is about recognizing what we're good at, recognizing what we have, the experience we have, the education we have, the access to resources that we have, even the money that we have. There's nothing wrong with having all of those things. Where it becomes a problem is when we look at those things and we let our ego get in the way. And first of all, we think to ourselves, look at all this stuff that I did myself, which is never true. There's always somebody who helped us get to where we are. But we look at all this stuff and we say, look at all this stuff I have and it's all for me. That's where ego gets in the way. What we can do instead is say, look at all this stuff I have. Wow, I am so fortunate. I'm so blessed. Yes, I've worked really hard, but look at all these things that others have, with the work of others, I've been able to accumulate. The humility comes in when we say, it's not all for me. And yes, we take care of ourselves, that's fine. But we ask ourselves, how do I use those things? How do I use those resources, those, the position that I have, the connections that I have to lift the people around me? That's what I call humble confidence. Yes, I have all these things and I can use them for good. So humility can look like a couple different things. Here's something you can try. Do literally anything that reminds you that you are not the most important person on the planet. So hold the door open for somebody. Be the last to speak in a meeting if you're in a leadership position. Do anything that reminds you that you're not the smartest person in the room, you're not the most important person in the room, and just recognize that there are other people around you who are important, who need things, who you can serve, who you can reach out to, who you can do little things for. That's one practice that helps us to be a little bit more humble. Okay, bringing it home with number 3, humanity. Humanity is about having a genuine care and interest for the human experience of the people around us. So how do we help people feel seen and heard? How do we help them know that they're valued and valuable? A couple of things we can do on the human side is when somebody pops into your head, a family member, a team member, a friend, whoever it is, pull out your phone and take 15 seconds and just write them a quick text. And just say, hey, you popped into my head. I was thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. How's that project going? I love you. Whatever the context calls for, those little unscheduled bursts of humanity that pop up for people feel so good because we weren't on their schedule. We didn't have to think about them, but we did. And people can tell and people can feel our care for them and that we want them to have a better human experience. So here's the magic with these 3 things. Honesty, humility, humanity, they're great by themselves, but what is amazing about them is when we practice them consistently together, right? And I write these down often in a Venn diagram. So if you take 3 circles and put them in a Venn diagram, what you get in the middle, when those 3 things are practiced consistently, the natural result is trust and human connection. I cannot overemphasize how important trust and human connection are. Every single company I know of cares about things like retention, performance, innovation, transparent communication, well-being, and all of these things hinge around our ability to connect with and trust other people. So companies that don't do this well, they'll see all of those metrics start to deteriorate. And so they'll throw bonuses and perks and benefits and all these things trying to get their people to stick around and to be productive and to innovate. But it doesn't work. The companies and the leaders who practice honesty, humility, and humanity naturally build trust and connection. People want to be there. They want to give their discretionary effort. They perform better. They admit mistakes. They ask for help. They'll shout out ideas to try to improve a process or a product because they are invested in what they're doing. Folks, this is not just a better way to lead. It's a more meaningful way to live. This is not a business concept. This is a human concept. The more we can practice honesty, humility, humanity, the more we will see differences and improvements in our relationships, no matter where we are. I'd love your thoughts, comments, questions, poke holes in it if you want. I'm learning my way through this stuff as well, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thanks for paying attention.